Evening, everybody. Do my usual check for a Friday night. Can we just check that you can all hear me? Does somebody give me a comment back? Hi, Tony. Derek's here as well, and Pete. I know there's a few others in there. I can't actually see. I haven't worked out how I can see who's, apart from on my phone, and then I've got to look at it in the mirror. I can't actually see it on the laptop. Whoa. And I am here, honest. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Friday night. These weeks are going by really, really quickly. But that's good because the river season's about to kick off. I'm hoping that the camera's not going to get too fascinated with my t-shirt tonight and is going to focus more on the flies, but we'll see. So this is one of the patterns we're going to tie tonight. Courtesy of Derek Young up at Ludlow Fly Tying Club. This is a take on the French Partridge Mayfly, designed by Steve Skuce. And I'm really looking forward to having a go with this one. I've not tied this one before, to be honest, but I'm really looking forward to having a play with it on the river in the next month or so. And don't forget, folks, that these are all recorded and they go up onto my Facebook YouTube channel, so you can go back and have a look and pick out any little bits that you missed. And I promise I'm going to start doing individual tying videos of the patterns that I'm doing. Just haven't quite got around to doing those yet, but that's going to be starting up in the next week or so. Okay, so may as well start. So let's start off with this rather wonderful Mayfly pattern, seeing as we're getting quite close to that wonderful time. Although in terms of upwing ephemeras, we get them around here all the time. So, you know, most of those olives are a Mayfly of some sort, but we're talking here about the sort of the Danicas and things like that. So I'm going to use here for this particular fly. Now this is an all-purpose nymph hook, but actually for quite bushy and big dry flies, it's a perfect hook because it's not that heavy, so it will actually be able to be supported in the surface. It needs quite a long shank for this because there's a lot of material to put in, which we'll see in a moment. I'm going to start off with my favourite Semperfly wax thread. It's a bit, there it is, wax thread. It's a 12/0. I just tie with it all the time in whichever colour I've got, but brown tends to be the one that I keep with 99.9% of the time. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to leave about 2 to 3 mils at the front, and that's really important on this fly because we're going to be packing a lot into it and I need that breathing space. And I'm going to take my thread halfway down, just past halfway, and take off the excess. And then I'm going to come in with the good old pheasant tail, and I'm going to take off 6 barbules. Don't matter if you get 7 or 5, to be fair. And I'm going to tie these onto the bare hook, which is why I've left this space here, because I find that it seats them better. Now what I'm looking for is the Mayflies have got a really long tail, so I'm gonna look for the length of the shank at the end there. Okay, and I'm just going to come in and I'm going to place my fingers and down on the side and then when I bring the thread up, it brings the pheasant tail up onto the top of the hook and seats it in the right place. And I'm just going to make turns down until I get to in line just past the tip, and I've got my tail tied in. Now what I like to do with this one is because I've been playing with it after Derek suggested that this was a pattern I might tie today. I was just looking at this sort of material here, and I thought it is focusing on my t-shirt. Hang on a second. Plain white t-shirt, that's better. Right, learnt my lesson again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this waste material here to build up a taper for the body, because these Mayfly have got quite a bulbous, bulky body. So I'm just going to bring that down, and I'm going to bend it back over on itself again and tie it down again. Now it does leave a little step, but actually that's not a problem, because we're going to get rid of that and deal with that with our dubbed body. I'm just going to nip that off, tidy up the end here, and then bring my thread down towards the end. So I've sort of got a taper already here. Okay, now Steve Skuce's pattern called for a body hackle, a palmed body hackle. So I'm going to use, and I don't have the exact cree that he was using, so I'm going to use this Parr dark ginger whiting cape. And what I'm looking for is a feather that would be traditionally used sort of on an 18 to 20. I don't want it to be big and bushy and right down here past the hook point. I want it to be within this space here. So I'm going to choose and it's quite deceptive, because on the stem, these feathers and these barbs don't look particularly big, but as soon as you start to offer them up, they spread, and that's actually quite wide. But that one seems to be doing exactly what I want it to do. So I'm just going to nip off the end, get rid of that, and then just peel back some of the end barbules, and then I'm just going to cut them 1, 2 either side, so I get a little cone. And remember from previous sessions, when I tie that in, it helps it to bite, but also stops it from being pulled out. And then I just tidy that up, and that isn't going to go anywhere. Okay, I'm going to leave that there for the moment. Now for the body, for this particular fly, I'm going to use Semperfli Kapok. The original pattern calls for superfine dubbing, but this does exactly the same job. And normally we would tie Kapok in a dubbing loop or split thread, because it needs to be spread out. But this time I want it to be quite tight and quite fine. And Kapok does that really well, so it's really versatile. And I'm going to use this Danica colour, so it's a lightish cream, and I'm just going to pinch off a small amount, and I'm going to spread it out in my fingers. And the great thing about these dubbing boxes of Semperfli Kapok is that that'll last forever. Once you've got them, that's it. You're never going to have to buy any more unless you're tying masses of these things. And what I'm going to do is just going to come in, and I'm just going to offer it up to my thread, and I'm just going to dub it onto my thread in a very tight noodle. And I want this really tight, as uniform as I can, all the way along. So it takes a little bit of time just to tease it out, move it up and down, push it up. There we go. And you can see how fine a noodle that actually makes. And then I'm just going to bring it around and just pull it back and bring it up the body. Don't worry if you miss a little bit, because you can always go back over it. I'm going to bring it up the body like so. If you find that you've got a big lump, just stop and give it a little tease out. I'm going to bring it all the way along up to the point at the end by there. Now I'm going to take my body hackle, and I am going to use hackle pliers for this, because when I was playing with these earlier, I kept dropping it. So I'm going to put my turns. I'm going to gradually space my turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, just slipped then. And at this point, I'm automatically thinking stimulator again. This is a stimulator body ultimately, without the wire. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to nip off that tip. Now don't throw away that tip. That's going to come back for us in a bit, because that's going to form the wings of the daddy long legs. So I'm just going to place that there, and I've got that. Now just going to stroke those back and just tidy up at this upper end here. There we go. So we've got the tail, we've got the main part of the body in. It's sort of looking Mayfly-ish already. Now Steve's pattern also called for then a darker coloured hackle, but oversized at the front. So we want it to be coming down to sort of just below the body hackle. So, and this is definitely one. Actually, I've got one here that I got earlier, which I can use the end of. I can use this, and that's perfectly fine. And you can see the barbules are there, so it's significantly bigger. So I'm just going to trim those again, bring it up to the side and tie it in. Then I can trap down all of that stem, and I do not have to trim it, because it was short enough already, and there it is. That isn't going to go anywhere. Now for the thorax area, I'm going to use the other pack of Semperfli Kapok, and I'm looking for a sort of a browny colour, and we do this amazing grey brown here, and it's sort of got a pinky browny tinge to it with a bit of grey, and I was playing with it earlier, and it's really quite an interesting colour. Definitely one I'm going to use more of. I'm just going to put this fine dubbing noodle. Now remember what I said earlier, normally with Kapok we would tie it in with a dubbing loop or split thread. Here I'm using it in a slightly different way, just to form a very slim profiled thorax. Bring it down. A bit bulky there at the end. Let's just tease that out, give it a little twist. Up we go, and we've got a little bit there. Let's may as well use that up and tie that in. And you can see at the eye I've still got all that space there, and that's really important. So now I'm going to put in 1, 2 turns, and then I'm going to gradually just move that up through the thorax area, not touching turns. 2, 3, and bring it to that position and then tie that off. So it's in its own right, you can fish that as it is, can you? And I'm just going to nip this off. Keep the tip, stroke these back, and just tidy up and secure in that section there. And so far so good. Okay, so now the next stage, I'm just leaning down to grab stuff, by the way. The next stage is I'm going to come in with some partridge. Now it calls for French partridge. I haven't got French partridge. I've got red leg partridge, which is our equivalent. And I'm looking for a flank feather. So this is a skin from Cook's Hill. It's a great skin. And normally we'd be using these feathers down here for most of our patterns. But actually I'm going to fold a wing back. Just underneath the wing we got these rather beautiful creamy brown flank feathers. And they're really, really, really nice to tie with. Bit thicker in the stem. So you've got to have left a bit of space because the stem, as you wind it, is going to create a bit of mass. And it's a case of just looking and selecting a feather that's got, that looks pretty. They're all pretty much the same size on that part of the skin. And there it is. You can see that it's got this beautiful brown, creamy, and it's still got the barring. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring these back, hold it by the tip, and just remove the barbules from it. You can see how thick this is, which is why we don't tie it in at this end. We tie it in at the tip because this is the finer point. But we're still going to get some here, and I like to just grab the tip with my nail and just draw them back into that shape there. Now to tie it in, I'm going to have the good side facing me, and I'm just going to lick the tip. And I'm going to place the tip on the side. And I'm going to bring my thread round. I'm going to trap it in place. 2, 3, 4 turns. Then I can come in and just remove that tip. Then I can tidy it up. And now I've got my French partridge, or my partridge, in. Now again I'm going to come in with my my hackle pliers, but I've got a really long stem here. Now what I find is if I crimp it with my hackle pliers round about here, it tends to double over and then it gets in the way. So to help me with that, I'm just going to trim that end bit off, just to make life easy for myself. And then I'm going to hold on with my hackle pliers. I'll use my other ones. With my hackle pliers, there we go, like so. And then I'm going to wet my fingers and then I'm going to draw the partridge back on itself, so that when I take it round the hook shank, everything is pointing backwards and nothing is going forwards, hopefully. I'm going to put 2, and I've got enough space there. I am going to come in for a 3rd there, but you don't want to overdo that front hackle. There we go. Just going to put that one in there, and then bring my thread. I'm going to wiggle it through so I don't trap too many sections of the partridge. And you're going to trap some, but don't worry too much about it. So I've got 2 turns in there to trap it down, one to lock it, and the other one just to secure it. And then I'm just going to trim that off. Then wet my fingers, and I'm just going to draw my fingers back, and then I'm going to form a nice little head just at the front. take your time with it. You've left plenty of space. There we go. And then we can come in, he says, with his whip finish tool. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. All nicely secured and in place. And then give that a nip off there. Now, just to finish it off, I'm going to use some Cilia varnish, because this will sink into the head wraps rather than just sit on the top like Sally Hansen, which is great for making things bulletproof. But this, I want it to bed down into those wraps. I'm just going to use a needle to do that. Turn it upside down. And I'm just running my needle along it. I'm not dabbing, I'm just running it, letting the varnish do its job. And you can just tweak a bit of that off. And there we have it. So a take on the French Partridge Mayfly. Now what you would do is you'd bring all of these forward. Okay, you bring all of these forward. I'm really looking forward to trying this. I reckon that's going to be pretty effective on the River Itchen and the Meon in the next, well, throughout the summer, to be honest, because they're going to be taking them all the time. So it's a lovely little pattern. I'd not tied this one before. I don't have a significant number of Mayfly patterns in my box, to be fair, but this is definitely one that I'm going to tie more of. It also looks really good in presentation bottle as well, because I put one in here earlier on, and I had a bit of a play after that, and I tried a number of different things. So if I just remove that one, I thought, well, I want it slightly less hackly, so I tied a more sparse version of it, but without the body hackle this time. Okay, and just put on there's a bit of microglint here, Semperfli microglint, as the body, as the rib material, just to give it that segmentation, which I thought was that's gonna work quite well as well. Sit slightly lower in the water, and then I had I was just playing around, so I tied myself a parachute mayfly. And this was, I've just had some stuff lying around, so I thought, okay, I'll try this one. Really liking the hackle on this. Now this hackle is Coq de Lion. Okay, it's an olive Coq de Lion, come from a cape. We've got a CDC, there's 4 CDC feathers here for the sighting post, and I'm really looking forward to giving that a go as well on the river this summer. Okay, right then, folks, let's have a quick little look. Oh, I've got lots of various things here. Hi everybody. Yeah, Brian, thank you for that. Yellow sunburst pheasant cakes from Chevron. Yeah, yes. Oh, thank you, Derek. Excellent job. Nice tie. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so we have plenty of variation on that, and it's a case of those techniques that you're going to use in that you can utilise for most of the other mayflies. In fact, if you're going to do a Mohican mayfly, it's not too dissimilar. You got to use a bit of foam for a body. Okay, now just gonna have a little glass of wine. Don't forget, folks, if you've got any questions, or you want to ask anybody any questions, or you've got like Brian did, you've got any hints and tips for people, just chuck them up in the comments section so that everybody can see, and it really gives an opportunity for us to share lots of the information that we've all got in our heads. Okay, gonna move on, and I'm now gonna tie what's one of my favorite dry fly patterns, particularly for later on in the season, definitely towards the end of August, September, and into October, which is a dry daddy. But this dry daddy, we've done this one before on Fly Club, but it was requested again. This dry daddy is one that I've played around with and sort of made my own over the last few years. There's lots of variations of it, and lots of people have tied it. But to tie it, it's going to have a detached body. I need to make the detached body, so I'm going to use a needle to do this. And I'm just going to place my needle in my vise. And, let's just adjust it so I can actually clamp it. Place the needle in my vise. There we go. And I've got it all secured. Now, for the body, I'm going to use some foam. And I've got these pre-cut shapes that I cut using some bug body cutters from River Road that I've got, and basically I just cut one half and then I turned it around and cut the other half, so I've got this nice long strip. Gives me this nice tapered strip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end and I'm just going to trim the end more into a V shape. Just makes it easier later. More into a V shape. There we go. So it's into a V shape. And you could just give that a little blast with a lighter if you like. I'm not going to do that. And then what I do is I take the end and I'm going to place the end here. I want it embedded into the needle. Okay, so that's going to secure everything together. But I do need my tying thread, so I'm going to use my brown tying thread again. And I'm actually going to put it onto the needle in the same way as I would a hook. There we go. But I don't want to go down too far. And it's hanging there. And now I'm going to come in with my needle. I'm going to place it on the end like that. And then I'm just going to wrap around to form the tip of the tail of the daddy longlegs of the body. I'm going to put 2 turns in, and that's nice and secure on our it's nice and secure on the needle. It's not going to go anywhere. And now I want to continue that down to build up a segmented abdomen running along here. So to do that, I'm then going to take my thread, I'm going to bring it underneath, so round and underneath, and then sort of space it out. I want it quite close together towards the bottom end, and then get the segments getting larger as we move our way up. I'm just going to pull it tight, and I'm going to put a second turn in. Notice I'm not putting loads of turns. You can use too much thread. And then I'm just going to bring that round again. And this time I'm going to make that next segment slightly bigger. 1, tight, 2. What I like about this Semperfli thread is its tensile strength is great. It takes a lot to break it. I'm just going to keep going along, make the next one about the same size. And the great thing about this technique is you can make up a number of these and have them in a box. So I've got a couple of boxes here that have got various, I don't know if you can see in here that I've got various Mayfly, detached Mayfly bodies already made up, but with moose mane hair for the tail sticking out the end. And you can see that it runs all the way through, ready to go for later on. And then generally I keep it to 5 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring it back round, and there's my 5th. A couple more turns on that one. You can make them bigger You can have it longer, you can have a longer body, whatever you like. It depends on the size of the fly. I've tied these down to size 20s, and they don't half work, particularly at me on springs, on the catch and release, late in an evening. And then I'm just going to tie that off. Just going to come in, trim that off. And then I'm just going to ease it off. So you can see I've got my segmented body formed. There it is. It's nice and foamy, so it gives it some flotation, and that's ready to go. Right, now I can take my needle out. I can get rid of that. And now I'm going to come to a dry fly hook. I'm going to use Sprite Barbless size 14 dry fly for this. And I like this particular hook for it because it's got a nice long shank, long enough for me to be able to get lots of stuff in the right places. Okay, so I'm just going to put that into the vise. There we go. And I'm going to put my tying thread, bring my tying thread down. But I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm going to bring it about 3/4 of the way down, just in line with the point of my hook. I'm going to get rid of that. And now I'm going to tie in my tail, my abdomen. So there's my abdomen. That's what it's going to look like. And I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to use that final segment there. Don't know if you can just see that final point of the segment there, just ahead of it, to form a 6. And I'm just going to 1, give it a pull, tighten it up, 2, 3, and it'll sit on the top. There we go. It'll sit on the top, and I'm going to come under it, back over, around the front, really to secure it in place, like so. Now I'm going to leave this bit here because I want that, so that's going to become useful in a moment. I want to leave my tying thread on the for me on the eye side, on my right hand side of the foam. There it is. Okay, now I get to prettify it. I like this bit. So it's where I get to play again with Andrew Scruffy dubbing. So I like this for these guys. And I'm going to use this Scruffy Buzzer colour. So it's got lots of different colours in it, and I only want a little tiny little bit. And I'm going to just dub that on. There we go. Dub that on. I'm literally just going to put in a turn or two just over those wraps, just to tidy them up, and then 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to put a couple of turns, just there we go, four turns just on the inside there, just to knock that up. Okay. Now the next stage is I need to put my legs in, and this will be the point at which I can't find my knotted pheasant tail. It should be here somewhere. So you've got so many that you struggle to find them. I've got a pheasant tail that I pre-knotted somewhere, hiding from me. Is that it? No, that's not it. That's it. I got it. Aha. So this one is a pre-knotted. I did this one myself. Sat with a crochet hook one evening and just knotted all the way up. I think my wife was watching something I didn't want to watch, to be honest. And these are tied individually. So I'm gonna take off 3. These are only single knotted. I'm not that sad. I didn't do double knots. And I've got my first 3. There they are. I'm gonna try and get those knots roughly in line with each other. And then I'm just going to bring in my legs. Just going to hold them onto the top, make a turn, and then use the legs themselves to position under the thread. That one thread keeps them there, and you can have them going up, you could have them going down, space them out, whatever you like. So I'm going to put 2 lock-in turns in. There we go. I'm going to come in. I'm going to do the same on the other side. There we go. Line up the knots. Make sure the legs are pointing. Well, these ones are pointing all over the place at the moment. It's a bit like Bambi. And I'm going to get them in the same position. 1 turn. Use that turn to hold so you can position and get them the right length. 1, 2, 3 turns. Then what I like to do is I like to just take hold of them and just to secure them in. Secure them a couple of millimeters down and then come back again. And then that just basically means that they're not going to go anywhere. And I'm just going to knit those off. Just tidy up there. And bring myself back. Now I'm going to come back to my tiny little bit of dubbing, and I mean a tiny pinch. I'm going to place that on and just put that just behind the legs. There we go. And we're in. Now, do you remember earlier I said we'll go back and we'll look at the tiny of the feathers that we'd used? Well, I've got them here. One of them's not looking too great, but we're still going to use it because the fish don't care. So there's one. There it is, got that nice barring on it. I'm just going to pull off just a couple of the end bits, and then I'm going to place it just on top of the hook shank. 1 turn to tie it down, and then use my fingers just to position it where I would like it, like so, and then put a second lock-in turn in. And I've got 1 wing there, and I'm only using a couple of turns each time because the most important thing is the right thread tension in my mind. If you get the thread tension right, everything else will follow. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just measuring up, because this feather was just this tip was just slightly longer than the previous one, so I want them both roughly the same size. And I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to put positioning turn in. There we go. 2, 3, and then I'm just going to take that and bind those in so they're not going to go anywhere. Any excess I'm just going to trim off. There we go. And I'm going to work my way back again, like so. Then I'm going to take another little pinch of scruffy dubbing. You don't have to put all these little bits in. I just like it. Just gives me that confidence that it looks good, it's going to fish well. I'm going to push it up. 1, 2, no more than that. I'm just going to pull the remainder off. Don't need that. And get rid of that. There we go. So I'm just going to take a look at it. So that's what we've got so far. Daddy Longlegs style. It's looking pretty good. Remember, this is a size 14, so it's only little. But that's great. Here we go. Right, so going to come back to my bar ginger cape, and I'm going to choose an appropriate feather. Just going to offer it up. That'll do. Offer it up to the hook just to check, because for the life of me I don't know where I put my hackle gauge again. It was here about 2 minutes ago. Ah, there it is, I got it. So there's my hackle gauge. So what I'm going to do with a hackle gauge, what you really need to do is wind it round. Don't just do it once, wind it round so you can see where it's going to fit. Sorry, that wasn't even on camera then, was it? Where it's going to fit. This is perfect for what I want. So I don't want it too long. And I'm going to, like we've done with our other dry fly hackles, I'm just going to cut a little comb at the end, so it's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to come in and tie it in place. Nip off any excess and bring my thread down to the point at which I started my tie-in thread earlier on. Now I'm going to put in some touching turns with my hackle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably get away with another one. 6. It's amazing how much space just turning a feather can take up on a hook. 1, 2. Come in. Just going to push my scissors against it. Keep hold of the tip because that's another wing. And I'm just going to draw these back like that, so we can now see that we've got a substantial hackle on there. Now this upper section here is going to come across and form a thorax. So I'm going to take my finger, I'm just going to put it in the middle of the hackle and just push it down either side. Just force it down either side, and then bring my foam across the top. Wet my left fingers, draw everything back like so. Put my finger on the top and put a loose turn just to hold it in place. Position it. Make sure I've got everything behind the thread. And I'm going to put in 4, 5. I'm going to put in 6 turns. And there we go. At that point, and that'll hold it in place. And then I'm going to whip finish. One, 2, 3. That's nice and secured. I'm going to just trim that off. And then this front bit we can now trim, but what I like to do with this one is I don't like to trim it right back. I like to just come in and I like to feel with my scissors so it's touching the eye of the hook. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to use that as my guide to trim. There we go. And then I'm just going to take off these sharp corners to reduce any spinning. You need to really reduce the number of false casts with daddies because they do spin your leader if you have too many false casts going on. Just give it a trim. There we go. So we've got our main part of our daddy long legs. Now what you can do is you can come in with a Sharpie and along the segmented body you can put a little bit of brown marking. Don't overdo it, it just looks a bit silly otherwise. Across the front. I like to just rub my fingers over it a little bit because it takes off any of the loose pen. And there you have it. So my detached body daddy on a size 14. Remember I said that I have on occasion taken these down to a size 20. That was just for fun really, but we did use them and they did work. But this one will just sit in the surface, and if it's at that time of year, those fish will go mental, and they'll have that every single time, and twitched across the surface. It's a highly effective terrestrial dry fly for later on in the season. But in fact, you can probably give it a go on most days. Okay, right, so God, you're all really quiet tonight. Thank you, Peter. Hope you guys like that. So we've got our two key dry flies there for the day, and those were the two that were voted for in the poll that I put up. But in terms of the next, quite a few people wanted to see the bait fish that I did. I did it for the Ludlow fly tying group last week, but I'm going to open it up to you at this point. Is that something you would like to see tied this evening, or would you like me to show you a variation on the Mayfly, maybe the parachute Mayfly or something like that? So let me know, and just in the comments, and we'll go from there. Then I can stop for a breather for a gulp of wine. Okay, so the bait fish got it coming up on there. It's not coming up on my screen. On there, it's coming up on my phone, but not my other screen. So Neil says the bait fish. So Neil, this is for you. Okay. So I'm going to come in. Start off with size 10 short shank bait fish hook, and just going to place that. Now you can tie these down to size 8 long shank, which I did the other day just to see what it would look like. And I made the mistake of packing too much material onto the size 8. So it's quite deceptive, but it could really work for fry bashing time. For this particular one, I'm going to come in and I'm going to use where is it? I've got it here somewhere. I was going to use some nano silk, some 6/0 nano silk, Predator nano silk that I've got, and I've got it in the shop, but I can't see the bobbin that I put it on. That's what happens when you tidy up. Now I can't find what I want. So I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to come in and I'll use the Vivus 6/0. So I'm just going to put put this on as we normally would. I'm not too worried about leaving too much space at the front on this. I want a nice thick big thread for this. The reason I've gone to the Semperfli Nano Silk now after a couple of weeks of tying baitfish patterns is that it sits flatter. It doesn't make so much bulk on the underbody of the fly, and actually I quite like that because it allows for a bit more dexterity when you're tying, but it also allows for a better profile of the fly. I'm just going to place that on and stop my bobbin from spinning just for the moment. Now for the main part, the tail, I'm going to grab my predator drawer. I'm going to use a number of things for this, but I'm going to use some bucktail for rigidity on the tail, and I'm looking for some quite long sections of bucktail, and it's a case of selecting a little handful. I don't want a massive amount. Maybe, you know, when I really push them together like that, I'm looking at the width of a piece of pasta. Now, I'm just going to come in and take those out, and you're going to get some shorter bits. So I'm going to take the tips, the key bits I want. I'm going to draw my fingers back, and I'm going to remove all the really short bits from the key bit. I'm going to get rid of those. Don't really want those. And there's my tail. It's already nicely tapered already, so don't need to do much with that. Now I want my tail to be quite long. So on this particular, if I just move that back there, on this particular, I'm looking for a 60-40. So I want the tail to be 60% of the length and the rest of the body only 40%. So it's about 60-40. I want it to have a bit of movement. So I'm just going to come in, I'm just going to tie that down. Now it will flare, so I'm not going to put really tight turns on it, but that's okay, that's not a problem. That's what's going to give me some rigidity in the tail. And I'm just going to come in, trim off the bucktail. I'm going to tie that down. Now this is a variation on the baitfish pattern that I did for Ludlow last week, because actually I learned quite a lot from lots of people on that. Longer tails, bit more movement, and what to do with underneath as well. And then I came up with my own ideas as well, which is what this is all about. So next stage, I'm gonna go to Semperfli Crystal Flash, this beautiful copper colour. And I just love the colour on this, and you get so much in a hank as well, and it's all on one. What I like about it, unlike other Crystal Flashes, it's all just got one tying point at the top here, so you're not wasting loads. So you've got this full length that you can use for tails, for all sorts of things. It makes good ribs, it does all, you know, underwings on dry flies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for about 6 or so strands. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6. It does have a tendency, if you pull it, to wind itself back up on itself, a bit like a spring. I'm going to come right up to the top, and I'm just going to cut those off. And there we have it. I've got my six strands. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them in my fingers like this, and I'm going to tease out the middle ones so that they're longer than the sides, so that it's tapered. One of the best ways to do that is to just give it a twist. And we end up with tapering we go. We end it with it tapered. Don't want it all cut off. A nice cut straight edge. And I want this to come down and be really long. There we go. I'm just going to place it on the side. I'm going to put a lock-in turn in. Use the crystal flash to position. Another lock-in turn. Like that. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, because the other end is nicely tapered as well, I'm going to bring that round and I'm going to place it on the other side. So overall I've got 12 strands of crystal flash as that attractor. 2, 3. Tie those down. And then I'm just going to come in, trim those off. Don't get rid of those. Keep those because they'll make good ribbing material. And then we're just going to tidy up. Like so. Don't worry too much about covering absolutely everything because we're going to do that in a second. Okay, so we've got our crystal flash and we've got the tail, the bucktail, and that's sort of what it's going to look like in the water. Next stage, come in behind me because I've lost my cape. I've got this nice grizzle cape here, and I'm looking for some quite long feathers that are at the end. I've got a whole stack of them here, and I wouldn't normally use, but they make really good and beautiful sides for these bait fish patterns. And in the water, when I was fishing for pike the other day in the water, they look like a scale pattern, and I hadn't quite visualized. I knew that's what it would do, but I hadn't visualized it in the water on a retrieve. But it gives a really nice side scale pattern. What I'm looking for is I'm going to put one on either side. I want them to be the length of the tail, if not slightly longer. So I'm just going to judge it, and then being attacked by crystal flash, I'm just going to trim it off, and then I'm just going to remove this bottom section on both. It's robust enough that you can just grip it in your fingers and just give them a pull. And then I'm going to take the first one. Now this is where the rotating vise comes in handy. I'm going to put it sideways, and then I'm just going to place it on the top. Hold it with my finger. Trap it down with 3 turns. There we go. In on the sides, and then do the same on the other side. It's not playing ball. There we go. Just get my finger in, push it down. 1, 2, 3, and then take a moment just to position it so it's in the right position for the fly, as it will move and it will rotate. I find if I just pull it through just a little bit, it helps position it, and then I can tidy that up. Just going to tie all those down. Can't be bothered to cut them at this point. And there's our main part of our tail there. Now, next stage, I'm going to use some Semperfine dubbing, and it's in this crystally white. So I'm just going to tease some of this out really long. It's great stuff for these sorts of patterns. You see, I've got it all in my hand there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread around. I'm going to form a dubbing loop, tie that off, and then bring that down. I'm going to put my dubbing spinner. What I'm going to do with this, I'm going to tease it all out. I'm going to place it into the loop and then give it a spin, but just make sure you've got it all in there, because otherwise you're going to lose it. Take your time with it. There we go. In. Just add a little bit more. There we go. Now I'm just going to spin it. Don't want it too tight. There we go, because I want it quite bulky. And from that small amount of material, we end up with quite a lot to put around the shank of the hook. So I can then bring it around and just build up along the shank. So far I've not put any fibre in, because I'm going to put some hollow wraps in, and it's all going to come around the sides. So I'm just going to use all this up. No point in wasting it. Bring it all the way down and tie it off. Just get rid of that. There we go. Draw everything back and just tidy up at this point. And then I'm going to take my little toothbrush that I've cut down. See, I've cut it all down. I'm just going to give these a brush out so it comes down the back and be all straggly and shiny in the water. There we go. Okay, so got our key elements in. We've got the tail, we've got the key part of the body there. Now at this point, you can put in some more feathers. You could change the colour of them. I'm going to put in 2 more to give it a tapered effect. Just got to find roughly the same size. That's 1 and 2. And it's a good use of those big, long, sort of schlappany type feathers that you get on the back of a cape that you're often thinking, because I'm used to tying sort of down to size 20, size 22 dry flies, and I'm thinking, what am I going to use those for? I've got no idea. That and woolly buggers, that's about it. And there they are. I'm going to tie them in at this point, so further back. So I don't want them as long, so I'm just going to judge here to give it a taper. So I want it to be, so the end comes right out here. So I don't know if you can see that. There we go. There's the end. Just move that out. There's the end. So I want it to appear to be about there. So about 2/3. So again, I'm going to come in, trim that down. Vice on its side. There we go. Because it's sticking out a little bit. That'll correct itself in a bit. I'm just going to give it a pull through with a pair of tweezers. And then tie back on it to push it back down. It doesn't matter that it's sticking out slightly. It doesn't matter at all. because when we get the whole thing together, it's all going to clump in together. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Come in with my tweezers, give it a pull, so it's in the right position, and then I can tie these down. We just twizzle all this back. You can see that we've got the tail end and we've got the crystal flash running through the middle of that, and it's looking good. Okay, now we can start with the main parts of the body, and I'm going to use a hank of silver baitfish predator fibre. Again, it's Semperfly predator fibre. It's great stuff, and there's so much here that you could tie loads of flies out of it. I don't want this fly to be too bulky, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to take a small amount. So when I pull it, yeah, we're looking at about just slightly longer. Oh, that's not long enough. Slightly wider than a piece of spaghetti pasta. Maybe 2, and I'm just going to tease that out. So there it is. Okay, and just going to trim that down. There it is. Now, this is where the tapering becomes really important. It's taken me ages to work out how to do it properly, and I still haven't got it right. So I'm just going to tease out the middle and just pull it so that it's longer than the sides. You've got to do it quite gently, because otherwise you will end up pulling too much. So I get it to that point, and then I worked out that if I give it a twist like this, it automatically starts to taper. I don't know if you can see that taper there. It automatically starts to taper, and you get these long bits which you can just pull out. But you get this much nicer taper going across. Now for this bit, I'm going to put across the top. So I've got that tapered, and I'm going to bring it right back to the tip of the tail, like so. I'm going to place my finger on the top, and I'm going to trap that down. 1, give it a pull, 2, and then I'm going to use my finger just to position it around the sides of the hook shank. And I'm going to come in. I'm just going to give that a little 45-degree haircut. There we go. See that it's all going to start to come into play now. Now this end here, now the other end was already tapered, because we tapered one end, the other end automatically tapers as well. So I just turned it round, and for this bit I'm going to flip it upside down. And I don't want it as long as the upper wing. I want it about 2/3. So I'm just going to place it and position it underneath and do exactly the same. I'm just going to put 1, 2 turns, and then I'm going to use the fibre itself to position it. I'm going to draw it back, split it in half, and bring it round the hook bend. Take your time. You will stick yourself on the hook. It is very sharp and it hurts, and I don't like doing it. And I'm just going to tighten that up like that, and come in and we can tidy that up. So we're already getting this quite streamlined baitfish pattern here as we're running down. Now
came up, I was thinking about this, and I was fishing with good friend Greg the other day, and Kieran and Paul, and Greg had we were fishing for pike actually, and he had a rainbow trout, small rainbow trout Parr fly that he had, and it'd been absolutely mullered by pike previously, so I thought I'd tie him another one. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tie him an example. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump to this really gorgeous red and white Semper fly predator fibre. It's even better when you comb it out, and I'm going to use this to form sort of the rainbow stripe down the side. And again, I'm going to take a piece of material, again width or two of a piece of pasta, come up to the top, I'm going to trim it off, and now for this bit I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to trim or cut it. I'm going to put one half to one side just for the moment. I've got half here, and I'm now going to go through that process. I'm going to taper it. I'm just going to give it a wiggle. You can probably see that when it goes down the side, it's got this lovely stripe going down it, along with a bit of that white and silver in it as well. I'm going to taper that out, and for this I'm going to use a different tie here. I'm going to use an X tie on this. Now I don't want it to go all the way right down to the back, I want it about halfway, so I'm going to tie this in half and half just across the top, a bit like we did with the daddy long legs. 2, 3, just going to tie that in. There we go. So this will be what we call an X tie, and I'm then going to do the same with the other piece that I cut. There we go. Get rid of any loose bits that are just annoying. Hold it on. You can see that it forms 1, 2, 3. So it forms an X shape. If I turn it, it forms an X shape across the top. Now, what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to spend a little moment just positioning these bits, spreading them out. What I'm going to do is on each side, I'm going to take the two that are on each side, and I'm just going to draw them back along the side of the fly. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And those are going to be positioned in place. And then I'm just going to tie them down. Be careful of the step that I've got there. There we go. Got the red floating all the way down already. And just tidy this little bit up. Like so. There she is. And then I'm going to come back to my silver baitfish. No, that's not silver baitfish, that's tan. There it is. No, my silver baitfish. And I'm going to take another piece. I'm going to repeat the winging procedure. I won't talk through it, I'll just quickly do it. Repeat the winging procedure. I'm tapering it. Place it on the top. It's not going to go all the way back. I want it about 2/3 of the way back. Put my finger on it, tie it down. Now don't worry that we've got some space in the middle, because all that's going to get hidden. Like so. we go. Just going to secure that in place. Flip it over. And what you could also do on these wraps in between here is you could put some varnish on them or some UV resin and zap it and make it pretty much predator proof. I can imagine that I might do that at various times. So I'm just going to place that in. There we go. Separate these out. Like that. Got a bit of movement there, so I'm just going to tighten those down into place. Just tie it off. So we're almost done for the main body materials. So you can look at it like that, and you can give it a bit of a twizzle on the side. I'm just going to tidy that up like that, like so. And I'm going to come back with my red this time. I don't think I had any spare. Oh yes, I did. It's over here. Got some red, some spare red here. A little bit more than I need, so I'm going to just reduce that down just a little bit. And for this, I'm going to add a bit of bulk to the front section of the fly. So I'm going to tie this in a slightly different way. I want it to come across the top. I don't want it to be all the way back down. I want it to be sort of round about there. Okay, so it tapers in with the red on top. And I'm going to tie this in reverse style. One, so it's facing across the eye, two, and I'm going to tie that down. And then I'm going to come in, just trim that down. Just tighten that in like that. And then I'm going to do the same on the bottom. And for this, I'm going to use that little bit of silver bait fish that we had. And it's looking a bit of a mess at the moment. They always do until you give them a comb and you position them in the positions that you want. But I'm going to taper this piece. It's not tapered yet. And I want to do the same on the underside. And I'm going to bring it on the underside like that. Slightly shorter than the top. 1, 2, 3 to hold it down. Let's position it. Then I'm going to come in, a little trim, like so. I'm going to turn it all the right way back round. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all this forward, like so. And under here, I should have done that in the first place. Under here, I'm going to separate this out. I'm going to bring this all the way around, like so. And on the top. This is going to give us a bulkier head than the rest of the body, which is quite slimline, and it will help to hide any sections that we can still see of the main body. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a dam thread up in front. I'm not going to tie over those. I just want to push them back. going to use my thread to do that. It pushes it all the way back, like so. And it's at this point, and at any point really, where you can find it underneath all of the fibre that you've got. Just drop my scissors. I'm going to regret that. Where you can give it a bit of a comb. Looks a bit like a dodgy haircut at the moment. But all that will come into place. And we're going to bring it back and give it a... There we go. Like so. You can see that you got these sections here that hollow out, and that's where you could put in X ties to cover that if we wanted to. But I'm not going to do that, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this as an opportunity to finish the fly off and put the eyes on, so, and the head. So I'm just going to tidy up that front section a little bit further. There we go. I'm going to tie her off. I've left quite a lot there at the front, but that's going to play to our advantage in a minute. Bring that off. Any bits that are sticking out a little bit too much, you can trim off if you like. I like to not trim too much of the material, that's why I like to taper it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these realistic bait eyes, 6mm. I'm just going to take 2 off. I'm just going to attach them to my finger for the moment so I don't lose them. Okay, and I'm going to use resin. So there's a bit of Gulf Flexman here, so it's finer, and it also helps. It also flexes. It's a bit rubbery. So I'm just going to turn my bait fish on the side, and I'm going to take one of the eyes, and they're adhesive, and I'm just going to roughly decide where I'm going to put it. I'm going to offer it up where I'm going to put it. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm going to put a dot of resin in the position where I'd like to put it. Then I'm going to take my eye and I'm going to place it on that spot. I'm just going to hold it in place. Remember, it's adhesive, so it won't fall off. I'm just going to get my torch and I'm going to get my scissors. And I'm going to push it down with my scissors and give it a zap. Okay, so it's starting to look very much like a fish now. And then I come round and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. Like so. I'm going to take my eye. And before I zap this one, I'm going to just check that it's in the right position on either side, because otherwise you end up with a really weird looking fish. And I'm going to position it there. There we go. I'm going to come in with my scissors and push it down. Now the reason I'm using my scissors and not my finger is because I don't want to zap my finger and end up with my finger stuck to it, because it hurts. Don't ask me how I know, it just does. And then I'm just going to zap that into play. So there we go. So we've got our eyes in the right places. And now for some more resin. Okay, so I'm going to come in first of all, and this time I'm going to use some very thick Fat Man resin. And I'm just going to draw all these back, and I'm going to put some resin across the bridge of the eyes, down onto the wraps for the head. You can see that this is all nice and thick. So there it is. Just going to let it just seep its way down, and then I'm just going to take a needle. I'm just going to bring it right down to the eye. Let's check that I've got it all in the right place. It's looking just a little bit chunky on one side. So I'm just going to manipulate it with my needle, then give it a zap. Now I'm going to repeat that underneath. So what the resin as well does, I've found, is it gives it a bit of mass, so it allows the bait fish to dip and swerve in the water when you retrieve it. And that was quite an eye-opener on Sunday as well. So just use my needle, move it up through, give it a zap. What I then like to do with this one is take the resin and just put a dot in the centre of the eye, and then use my needle just to spread it all over to give it that extra protection and security, and it evens out any bumps and lumps that are there. Give it a blast. Do the same on the other side. Needle in. All the way around, give it a blast. And then, just because I've got it, I discovered that Golf do a really nice resin called motor oil. So I bought some just to see what it would really be like, because it intrigued me. And I discovered that if I do something like this, and I put a little spot of it, it's very thick and it's oil coloured. On the top, it gives a completely different picture. Again, it gives you another level of colour, just for a bit of fun really. But I can see that I'm going to use this motor oil quite a lot, particularly on realistic caddis bodies and things like that, to give it that brownish tinge to it. Just give it a rotate. Make sure it's as you want it. Make sure you put the lids back on all the resins. And then just at that point now where just give it a little bit of a twist and a twizzle, and we get this lovely look on our bait fish. And they're really fun to tie, I found. I really enjoyed learning about them and testing myself, because you end up tying the same things all the time. And what I then like to do is I just like to take a little bit of resin, of the Flex Man resin, and put it on the end of a cocktail stick or a stick like this. And I'm just going to rub it down the side to give it just towards the head and the first quarter of the bait fish. It keeps everything then at that front end sort of static and allows the tail to move. And it helps when to get it to drop in the water column as well. And it's not much, just a tiny little amount. And I'm going to come in and just give it a final going over with my UV torch. And the Flex Man really does flex like that. Look, as a resin, it's all not hard and solid like. And I really quite like it. And just position everything as you want it. And if I do that, you can sort of see the whole effect. The whole effect there. And what happens is that these fibres become quite translucent in the water, and they still have all that flash, but they're very filmy, and you get to see all of the barred grizzle feathers looking like the sides, the scale pattern on the side of a bait fish. So there you go. There's my sort of little rainbow trout sort of Parr for Greg. And I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Bit different from all the others. The others are really small. This one's really large. But they're really fun to tie. And there's so many good videos out there to watch. That you know, it's just a case of sitting there going, oh, and then just buying a small amount of the materials, because you can be really creative, because it takes markers really well. You can change colors. You could add stripes to it. You can do whatever you like to it. And you know, the other thing as well, if you wanted to cut it, which I know some people do, don't cut straight like this. You know, what I tend to do is just come in and then I run the scissors along it, and it will cut it as it goes along rather than snipping, because otherwise you end up with very jagged sections running all the way through. Okay, so there's my 3 for tonight, folks. There's my 3 for tonight. My laptop has decided that it's going to play up, but we'll get that back on in a minute. So I hope you enjoyed those. Give them a try, have a go. Don't forget, you can pick up quite a lot of the materials off lostlakefly.co.uk. Come in and have a look. Give me a bit of support on that. That'd be really great. And if you need anything, just let me know, and I'll be back next week. Next week, I've decided I've had a hankering for tying micro dries, so tiny little dry flies, for those times when those fish are sipping, but they're not taking what you might regularly have in your box. So that's what we're going to look at next week. Check these out on the YouTube channel, Lost Lake Fly Club. Like and subscribe, spread the word. And next week I'm going to be doing some of these as individual tying tutorials as well. So you'll have those up, and they will come with PDF downloads as well, courtesy of my good friend Kieran, who is an amazing graphic designer, and does way too much for me than I do for him. But it's all good, and I will see you all for another edition next week. But stay safe, enjoy the rugby this weekend,
and enjoy the weather. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.